Morgan, just you're raising your hands to say something. Yes, do it.
Yeah, I was like, do you guys want to do outro?
I see. It's already outro time.
Yeah, good luck editing this podcast.
Yeah, God.
What we can do is we need to have an agenda.
Nah, there's always an agenda. I have a whole freaking document here already. Today we have a very special guest. Henry is from Malaysia, like us. So he's currently based in Berlin. So Henry, a lot of people know about you because of the work you've done for the COVIDNow website. Have you heard about it before?
No. Sorry, Henry.
Oh, no.
So this is how I came to know about Henry. I think in the Malaysia lockdown period when Google trying to start tech events online, and one of the talks that he gave, it was talking about how he built the Twitter bot where it kind of crawls the everyday government during that time have this today have how many COVID cases on how many vaccine cases.
The government was scaring you every day, right?
But Henry's the one that focusing on the vaccination rate, and he kind of crawl from the official government data and then kind of post it very nicely in Twitter.
Nice.
It's kind of like the year in progress on Twitter.
Nice.
So Henry grabbed inspiration from that. And yeah, Henry, talk about yourself.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, let me properly introduce myself. I'm Henry. I'm the one that built the COVIDNow. If you know about COVIDNow, the team, there's 3 Lim. I'm one of the Lim. Yeah, what else I can talk about myself? I'm a Google developer expert in web tech.
I think within our circle, right, Adam, we hardly have any web developing friends, right?
I'm trying to think now. No, all the friends I know are mobile developers. I don't know any backend people or front-end developers.
And Henry is the one that specializes in front-end and web development. So he's really into web development.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm also one of the rare web developer that attended Droidcon Berlin 2022.
How did you end up there? Was it?
Yeah, I would say the reason is very, very simple. Because I got a free ticket.
I see.
So why not?
Of course.
I do know a few people going to speak and going to Droidcon. I do know some people from Google and especially from Firebase. Someone from Google asked me hey, I have a ticket I can give you if you want to go. I was then I checked on the agenda. I was yeah, that sounds very interesting. Although I'm not a web developer, there are some topics that are good to know. Although I don't know how useful is it.
Yeah.
But hey, it's always good to learn something, right? But also at the same time, it's a good chance to meet old friends. This is my first conference since the pandemic, right? I think I do attend some conference in Bangkok, but I mean the one in Bangkok is only Thai people. So it's my first conference after the pandemic to meet people from all around the world.
I think one interesting thing, Adam, I'm not sure whether you remember, a while back when we were in Malaysia, there will be Coco Hit iOS meetup.
In Malaysia?
And then you always try to drag me along. Yep.
I see.
You remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember there was one at Astro.
Yeah, and you said that it's always nice to cross-pollinate, right? With different platforms.
Yeah. I mean, just because you're a web developer, mobile development, at the end of the day, we're all just doing front-end development. Of course, you could argue there are many differences, but if you look at it, if you take a step back, we're basically in the same sphere. It's always good to not be too specialized in one area, I think.
I mean, for me, is you can't monopoly on one thing, right? I think monopoly is not the correct word.
Don't put your eggs in one basket.
I mean, there's some best practice for Android for web. It's usually different, but also at the same time, there are some similarities that you can learn from it. One of the toys that talk about CI. So it was talking about the performance on Android. Then you use the CI to monitor to see is there any slowdown on your app. For as a front-end web developer, this is the same thing that can apply on my web app. So both Android and web iOS, any developer use CI. So yeah, that's one of the thought. It's very, very useful, and it's something I'm used to the knowledge I learned from Droidcon. Basically use it in my daily job.
So a little introduction to Adam. So Adam is an iOS developer. So here we got the 3 big front-end developers from different platforms. So me from Android, Adam from iOS, and Henry from the web.
Yeah, since we have Android, we have iOS, we have web. So what's your opinion about Flutter?
Straight in. Morgan, you have burning opinions on this, I heard. This is your platform to speak now, Morgan.
During Droidcon Berlin, there was a few open mic sessions where you get to go to the microphone and ask the Google engineers questions.
Yeah.
I have a very strong urge to ask about like, are you friends with the Flutter team? But yeah.
Why didn't you?
I don't know, man.
But actually, before we move on, what makes you want to ask that question? Because what is the feeling that you have that makes you want to ask that question?
From how I see it is that Flutter has been out for 3 years, I think. It feels like Google in the mobile strategy department, it feels like they are building two platforms that is trying to achieve the same thing. But of course, Flutter essentially is going like multi-platform approach. But like, hence the question like, if I want to build a new app today, should I build a native Android app or should I go with Flutter? And Google seems to be like, well, you can always do both and see what works for you kind of situation. And then you can see that the theme that they keep talking about where they're trying to bring their new UI toolkit, the Compose UI, and you can see that it's very strongly influenced from Flutter. Hence the idea was that like, would Flutter be merged into Android and be part of the Android group? And has a lot of uncertainty, I would say. Like, is Flutter getting enough love from Google? I think that's fundamentally the question from my side. So back to the question of why didn't I ask about a question like this? Because Droidcon Berlin, I think there was like 3,600 attendees. So it's like a big crowd. It's a big crowd.
Perfect spot to ask, right? The pressure of 2,000 people wanting to know whether Flutter is going to get any love or not.
Like Henry and me on the first day, the keynote, right? When we were sitting down in front of the row and waiting for the keynote to start. And when we took a look back and we realized that not everyone have a seat. So a lot of them had a seat on the floor. So it's like a lot of people trying to get into one hall.
But how did that happen? Did they oversell the tickets? Or like, that's odd? Or like people weren't taking seats that were available and...
But correct me if I'm wrong, right, Henry? I think Droidcon Berlin is one of the bigger Droidcons in the world, right? In terms of like attendees and attention.
I'm not sure which one is the biggest, but I know the two biggest one, I think it's the Droidcon Berlin and Droidcon San Francisco. Yeah, I mean like that's basically where the Android team based in.
Yep. One thing I noticed when attending Droidcon Berlin was that because Adam, like we always say that Europe is very connected. So like Netherlands, Germany, France, UK is like a train ride away, like 2 hours, and it's a completely different country and different culture. And then I think like having conferences in Europe, you get a bunch of people from different backgrounds coming here, where compared with conferences in US, where most of the attendees are people from US, or conferences in Asia, then it's a very localized event, where Europe is a lot of different countries that is nearby and it's easier to travel. And of all the conferences I've attended, I think Droidcon is one of the most colorful one so far.
Yeah, I would say the conference is very, very diverse. Like there are people coming from US, there are people coming from Africa, there are people coming from Asia. We're also part of the attendee from Asia. Maybe like for compared to US, maybe US is harder to go there. But of course, compared to US and Europe is way easier to travel to.
I feel like we still haven't answered Henry's question, actually, about what we think about Flutter. The thing that you touched on, Morgan, was sort of my original concerns about Flutter. I have doubts about anything that is backed by Google, because I think eventually Google is going to kill it without notice. Yeah, that was how my concerns about Flutter started. And then at work, there was a phase where we were actually quite focused on Flutter. We were learning Flutter. We were trying to really see whether this is something that was suitable for us. And I think that's when my opinion of it sort of changed a bit. And we didn't decide to go with it because our business priorities changed, and we haven't done any Flutter since for about 6 months now, maybe. My general impression now of Flutter is that I think it's cool. I think it's really cool to have a single, amongst all like multi-platform frameworks that I've come into contact with, Flutter is the one that is closest to, it's the nicest one so far. When you compare it now, when you look back at React Native for Xamarin, you just want to vomit compared to Flutter. It's the one to go for, I think, right now, if you're looking for something cross-platform, yeah. But I also understand your concern, Morgan, about how it feels like they're two babies in one family. But I think just like what Henry was saying earlier as well, Google as a company also probably doesn't want to concentrate on just one platform. They also want to offer different options for different people. I don't necessarily think they compete. Do they directly compete with one another? I guess they do.
So it's the same idea of don't put all the eggs in the same basket. Yeah, the same analogy that come back from the very beginning.
As also for Google to see, because I'm sure they don't really know how, sure they're excited or flattered about this idea, but you want to let it grow in the system as well. And especially at some point, I think the people, the developers or the users, people like us will eventually decide amongst ourselves which one is the one that is to go for. And then from there, Google will look at that, possibly think about how to move forward from there. But I think Flutter's interesting. I think if I was starting a new project from scratch, I would probably do that. I'd probably choose that as my platform to start with. But I don't really do apps on the side, so I'm not the one who should be talking. Yeah, I think it's cool. What do you think, Henry?
Yeah, I do have some opinion about Flutter. For me, it's kind of mixed feeling. I mean, like, yeah, there's one thing, but you completely forgot about is the Chrome. Google, like as usual, Google is trying to do everything. So they have the Chrome, the web, they have Android, then now they have Flutter. For me, like I don't see like Android and Flutter is like competition. For me, it's like Flutter exists is because of React Native and basically what they want to become the Google's React Native. React Native is owned by Facebook. Yeah, but I mean like Google want to have the same thing because when you build Android app, it's only going to run on Android. You can't run it on iOS. But of course, Flutter, you can run it on, you can build it for Android, iOS, and the web. I think it's coming to like macOS, more and more platform. But at the end, is that it's not like on developer tries to make the decision. It's more like the business people. Do they want to make the risk like the typical Google? It started to build a very nice Flutter app. Like 3 years later, Google discontinued it. Then all the business like, okay, now what should we do? Then we just go back to day zero. All the business need to start to build Android iOS web app again instead of just using Flutter.
It sounds like you're trying to say like actually web is the ultimate multi-platformer. Is that what you're trying to say?
As a web developer, yes, I say because web it runs everywhere. But as a web developer, I do get jealous about Android and iOS developer because of the support and the first party library you get. For example, basically during the whole 3 days in Droidcon, I'm very jealous about Compose and the Material Tree. So for web, for example, if you want to implement a bottom sheet, basically you just need to find a third party library which is supported by a stranger, which maybe he or she going to stop maintaining the library maybe next few weeks, you don't know. But if you use like if you're Android or iOS developer, there's a lot of first party library, like in this case the Material Tree, like you know when you use it, it's going to be well maintained. You have to
that's a misconception.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I have to stop you there. I think looking from the outside, you can have the impression that everything is nice and rosy in the mobile world. You use first-party libraries, first-party APIs, and everything's perfectly maintained. In reality, this is not really. And if anything, it's worse because we cannot see, at least I cannot see the implementation of a certain component. So if it's open source, maintained by a stranger or whatever, if I can see how it's actually implemented, then it's actually better. Yeah, it's not necessarily always the case that everything on mobile is nice and rosy and amazing.
I would say it's a very different approach, Henry. No, like mobile is more centralized, where web is based on more open standards. Like people contribute brick by brick, where mobile is very like Google has its own stuff, but it doesn't share with other platforms, and iOS has its own stuff and doesn't share with other platforms.
Yeah, I would say this is like the good and the bad thing about closed and open platform. Like Android and iOS technically is a closed platform. Web is a very, very open platform. But at the same time, for user, I think if they use closed platform, it's kind of nice because everything should work. But I mean, like as a web developer, it's kind of frustrating. Like Android is kind of same. For now, like web, we need to like when I build a web app, I need to make sure it works on Safari, works on Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge. But I think for Android developer, it's the same thing. Like you need to make sure the app works on device support, Google Play services, and Huawei service thing, and as well as the Amazon thing.
Yeah.
So I think the only platform that doesn't have this issue is iOS because iOS only can run on Apple device?
Well,
Right.
it depends. But because nowadays you could also build universal apps. So Apple has also moved away sort of from just calling it iOS, like iPhone applications so it used to be iPhone applications, and then you had iPhone applications and iPad applications, and now you have this universal thing where you can just build the ones for iOS, iPad, and macOS. So if you choose that as your deployment platforms, then you do have sort of 3 platforms to think about. And even on each platform, you're also different device sizes. Like on our app right now, we still support the first iPhone SE, which is tiny compared to like a 13 Pro Max now. So you still have those kind of issues. I do think it's not as annoying as the impression I get as on web. A good example on web, in our app, we have one page, which is shown in the app, that is actually a web page. And on iOS 14 and above, it cannot bold the text. Instead of becoming bold, it becomes italic. And everywhere else is fine. And the guy who was creating the page, he gave up. He couldn't figure out why on iOS 14 and above it didn't become bold. So yeah.
Who says iOS doesn't have fragmentation? Now iOS has fragmentation.
iOS is less. If you talk about fragmentation,
OSs.
though, it's definitely lesser. Because I haven't looked at our customer base, but I operate on the assumption that 95% of customers are running the latest version of the OS. If I had things my way, I would only support the last 2 major OS versions. Everything older than that, I will not bother.
Curious, right? Since now we have a web developer on this session, like, does web suffer any fragmentation issues? Like, for example, like a lot of people are still using older version of Chrome. Like, would that break functionality, or would that like make some feature break? Like, do you have any pain points maintaining that?
Yeah, I would say basically the biggest pain point is Safari. Surprise, surprise, it is not Internet Explorer, because there's basically no one using Internet Explorer. Yeah, I would say that those people using Internet Explorer are using Microsoft Edge right now, luckily, thankfully. But there are a lot of people they are forced to use Safari, which including me. Because I do use iPhone, and the only browser engine that can run on iPhone or iOS device is basically Safari. The engine is called WebKit. But if you install a Google Chrome on your iPhone or your iPad, it's a Safari with a Google Chrome skin. So that's the issue for Safari, is they're kind of lag behind if you compare to Chromium engine and also Firefox. Okay, usually we'll say like, this cutting edge feature I want to use, that it works on Chrome but it doesn't work on Safari. But that's the one issue that I have this morning. So there's a function called scroll into view. So it's very obvious. Basically, this function, it will automatically scroll into the view. If you on Chrome, there's also a extra option you can use. You can set the behavior to smooth. So you scroll to the view smoothly. But guess what? It doesn't work on iOS 15.
Question, right, Henry? So you're talking about Chrome. Even on Android Chrome, it supports this scroll to position, right?
Basically, all browser, except if you're using iPhone, then you are.
But the question was that, it's not specifically on mobile or web, right? It's the engine, right? So for example, you said that this API, Chromium, where it supports scroll to position, it reflects both on the Android mobile Chrome and the web version of Chrome, right? So which means that if you develop this feature, you can expect it to work both on mobile and the web, right?
Just us.
Yes, usually yes. Usually, like, if it's not working, it's usually a bug, which is usually it's like the first version when they release, there's a bug, like it's not working as expected. But once you wait for 1 or 2 weeks, then yes, it will be working perfectly on any platform except iOS, because it's not the same browser.
Yeah, and I imagine for you that's actually quite a bit of a headache, yeah? Because I imagine iOS users using Safari would make up quite a big portion of your user base.
Yes, that's why I say it's kind of stupid, because I'm also one of the users that contribute to the market share.
Well, what can you do about it, right? There's nothing you can do except for using a different phone entirely,
Yeah, I mean, like, I love iPhone, but I hate Safari.
Yeah.
The reason is not a technical reason. It's not like the Chromium engine cannot run on iOS. It's just because of the Apple policy.
Yeah.
Because the App Store policy say you cannot run third-party browser engine on it. If Apple changed the policy, just one line, just the paperwork stuff, then
we would have smooth scrolling, right?
I will have smooth scrolling, but that's actually, I'm not sure it's a good or bad thing. As an iOS user, now I have the option to choose between Safari or Google Chrome. So of course I will choose the best one. And at the same time, since Chrome is currently the best one, then it will kind of force Apple to like move forward to implement all the feature on Chrome on Safari. So at the end, both will be equally good. But at the same time, once they're basically you need to test more browser on more platform, because now in today, if you want to test on iOS, basically it's just one browser.
Yep.
So it kind of makes our life easier because we don't need to test more browser. But the problem is, the feature and the bug.
Yeah.
And it's also like part of how iOS do the firmware upgrade. So on Android, if you want to update the Google Chrome, you just go to Play Store. On iOS, if you want to update the Safari, you need to update the whole firmware, which is usually like 1 GB. It's not like you go to App Store and download a 10 MB patch.
Yeah.
Nah, I think firmware is not the right term. I think it's the OS that's the right term.
OS,
right?
correct. That's the challenge for us. Is like there's a bug on Safari, then Safari fix it, then they push a new like iOS 15.6. But the problem is how many % of the user is going to update to 15.6. Usually like from 14 to 15, there are a lot of big features. So they kind of encourage the user to upgrade from iOS 14 to 15. But once you're on iOS 15, 15 to 15.1 is a small changes. As a web developer, there are some very important bug fixes. But for the user, they don't understand, so they just ignore it.
Because the browser is really coupled to the OS, right?
Correct. The browser is part of
That's the
the
reason
OS.
why.
Yeah, it's not. You can't download Safari on the App Store.
Exactly. Download is not the issue. The problem is how you update it. It do happen like last time there's a big security issue. Everyone need to update the whole OS just to fix a very small Safari bug. But it's a very critical bug.
I can see the trend where Apple is trying to decouple a lot of their apps. Like recently, you can see more and more Apple apps that is on App Store now rather than on the system level, right? So I think maybe there's just too much thing coupled together with the Safari and the OS level.
Yeah, Safari was one of the very first apps that the iPhone came with. So I can imagine there's a lot of tight coupling between the two.
Yeah, if I remember the video correctly, like when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, they believe like web is the future. At the time, there's no app store.
Yeah.
So everything is on the web, everything is in the Safari. To be honest, for Apple, it's kind of makes sense for them to actually have a locked out ecosystem because App Store is where they earn the money. Safari, they don't earn anything. Yeah, there's one place they earn money is if you open Safari, like the default search engine is Google.
Yep.
Google do need to pay millions of dollars to Apple just for this.
But I'm curious, right? Can you monetize web plugins, or it's just like very uncommon? Like for example, if you build a very very nice web plugin for Safari or for Firefox
like
or for Chrome, can you monetize
browser
it?
extension?
Yeah,
Or-
like a browser extension. Are you able to monetize it?
Technically, yes, but I would say it's not very common because it depends on how can you do it. Okay, let's say you build an ad blocker. How can you put an advertisement on it? You put it on a setting page, but how many times do you really open the option page?
So you're saying that it's more hidden rather than prominent for user to nudge user to upgrade or to subscribe, right? That's what you meant,
Yes.
right?
Usually like
Ah.
yes, the only way to get the money is like usually it's like IAP, like in-app purchase.
Alright.
I think Chrome Web Store do have this function, but I would say most of the Chrome extension is like nice to have. So if
Yeah.
like you need to pay for it, I think the user just not going to pay for it. They're just going to not install it.
Did you say most Chrome extensions are nice to have? Is that what you said?
Yeah, for me like I use 2 Chrome extension. One is the ad blocker.
Yeah.
So imagine if ad blocker has advertisement.
Yeah.
Then
It completely goes
kinda
against.
doesn't make sense,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I wouldn't use an app blocker that has
Yeah.
ads in it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And another Chrome extension I use is the Bitwarden.
Your password manager.
You can't really pay anything in the Chrome extension, but you do have the option to pay in the desktop or the
Yeah.
phone
I
app.
used to pay for Bitwarden Premium.
Yeah, but you don't do it in the Chrome extension.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. I feel like the extension is like a companion app rather than a product, right?
I can tell you one thing. After I moved to 1Password, I must say my password experience is much nicer because on Safari, like on iOS, they actually have a 1Password extension. And it's actually quite nice compared to Bitwarden. Are you still on Bitwarden, Morgan?
I'm the 1Password, and then you and Jason call me a sheep.
No, you.
Yeah, for me, like I use Bitwarden, but I don't pay anything. I mean, like the reason why I use Bitwarden is because it's free.
Yep, that's fair. Yeah.
Previously, I was using I think LastPass.
Yeah.
I think it's LastPass, right? The one that changed the pricing model.
Well,
Then the F, the
all
whole
of them changed their pricing model at some point, no? But LastPass was bought by LogMeIn. That's the reason why I stopped using LastPass. I went to Bitwarden. Bitwarden was okay for a few years, and then now I'm on 1Password. Oh, I had it was covered in one of our previous episodes, but I went actually from LastPass to Bitwarden to iCloud Keychain, and I couldn't decide between Bitwarden and iCloud Keychain, so I was using both at the same time. And then eventually I decided to just consolidate everything into one platform.
The painful part is iCloud Keychain into 1Pass, right?
The painful part
for Bitwarden into 1Pass is not too bad, right?
I can't remember exactly, but I could import. But the painful part was the fact that now some websites were duplicated and they imported the files in slightly different formats. So then I had to go through all my 450 passwords, I think. And then I also decided that I wanted to actually remove all the passwords that I didn't, like all the accounts that I didn't care about. And now I reduced it down all the way to 170. So I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, actually I was using Google Password Manager. TLDR, the whole thing is shit.
Google has a password manager. I see. I did not even know that.
Yes, exactly.
Is it Google Password Manager or Chrome Remember My Password and please apply it next time I put it situation?
Yes, that is the thing they call the Google password. You can go to password.google.com.
I see.
That's why it's very good. Like when you do the login, like the Chrome integration is excellent.
Yeah.
The part is excellent. The first challenge is the Android integration. Because the thing is so Chromey. I think they added this feature like a few weeks ago. On Android, if you want to view your password, like you need to go to setting, you need to go to Chrome, then go to setting, then find it somewhere. If you compare to Bitwarden, it's just an app. You can find from the app launcher. It's not from the setting. That's the bigger challenge because I was trying to convince my parents to use Password Manager. Yeah, it works. So thankfully, but I would say the harder challenge is that I want them to use Google Password Manager because that's the easiest one, and they don't need to set up anything because it works. But the problem is there's one task that I try to ask them is I want them to view their password. It's basically Mission Impossible because they need to go to the setting, and the setting for me I don't even know where is it. So the thing is you need to go to setting, you go to scroll down to Google, then find the password, then sign in with your password, then you're able to see all the password there. But there's so many steps and it's kind of hidden. I think Google added a shortcut like which finally you can add it to your home screen. But it was so late that I really convinced my parents to use Bitwarden. So,
Bitwarden for your parents?
I mean,
oh my god, I can only... The interface of Bitwarden is very, in my opinion, quite not so user-friendly. Parents had trouble viewing passwords on Google. I can imagine Bitwarden also being a bit not nice, maybe.
Yeah, I did try a few, but then because I'm also using Bitwarden.
Yeah, you're familiar with it, so it makes sense.
They only use a few very basic features.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm using more feature. Like I'm using the biometric. I use the Touch ID on my Mac. Yeah, for them, they just want to view your password because before that, their password was just terrible. It was so bad that I was like, even I don't know the password, I can guess it. Like,
are you the one that parents will always call you in the middle of the night, say that, hey, Henry, what's my Google password again?
Yeah, so like,
I see.
Sometimes I do ask my mom, like, can you open the Google photo site? Then my mom asked me, like, hey, what's my Google password? I was like, I think I know what's your password. Yeah, so it's like, I know my mom's password, but my mom doesn't know her own password.
Would a family plan help to... I don't know whether Bitwarden has this family plans or not. And I don't know whether 1Password or LastPass might have a feature. But if you set up as a family, then you can share your passwords in one vault. Then maybe you can have access to look at their passwords if necessary.
Yeah, but now they're using the app, so they can just view it from the app themselves without asking me. I mean, like the best thing what I want is I want them to do the stuff themselves, so they don't need to wait for me because I mean like one of the biggest issue now is the time zone.
Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation we have with Henry. We actually have a part 2 to that where we will be continuing the next episode with Henry that we talk about his new life in Germany, and we have a list of exciting things that we talked about, and I hope to see you there. Bye.